Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on your time zone. Thank you so much for your time and welcome to this exclusive LegitScript webinar, CBD Certification, a new way to prove quality in the Wild West of CBD. We're so excited to roll out this new certification program for you. We've been working on it for a long time. And by the looks of it, it looks like a lot of you are really excited as well. We've had just a ton of interest in today's webinar, and we've got a whole variety of folks here with us today. We've got merchants, manufacturers, some marketers, payment service providers, even a few members of the media. For all I know, my mom is here listening. So really good crowd. We're sharing one computer here today, so it says talking Austin Johnson, but there'll be a few of us talking. Austin's our tech guy. But let's do introductions about who's going to be presenting for us today. My name is David Califf, and this is Gerard Olson who's with us. Say hi, Gerard.
Hi there.
He is a policy expert for us here at LegitScript and Associate Product Counsel. And he and the CBD certification team have been working and beavering away for months to perfect this certification program. My name is David, as I said, and I'm a communications specialist for LegitScript. And I also work here as an investigative analyst, which is a lot of fun. So today's webinar, we have an hour scheduled, but we know you're all busy, so we're actually just going to keep it as short and sweet as possible, probably closer to somewhere between 30 and 40 minutes, but the whole thing's just going to be chock full of good stuff. So pull up your latte and close out that Facebook tab. We see you there. And we'll just get started with all of the good stuff here. So before we dive into the particulars of the CBD program, I just wanted to give some context and some background about what LegitScript is and what we do. We're really well known among internet platforms and the payments community and even regulatory bodies. But for those of you on the line who are in the CBD world, you may not be as familiar with us. In a nutshell, LegitScript's mission is to make the internet and payment ecosystems safer and more transparent, both now and for future generations. And we do that in a number of different ways and with a variety of key partnerships. And I wanted to show some of those to you in a nice little timeline we have of LegitScript history. So we were founded in May of 2007. And for our first certification program, we started that in healthcare merchant certification in 2008. So it looks like that slide is not showing up there, so we're going to work on that to get that showing for you in just a second here. So our certification program in 2008 was our first one. Where we really gained steam, however, was 2 years later, when we partnered with Google to help help monitor their advertising platform for illicit online pharmacies. Thanks, Austin. Austin just saved me there. At the time, 9 out of 10 pharmaceutical ads on Google and Bing were problematic. We partnered first with Google and then later with Bing, and they now have a 99.8 sustained reduction in what we call rogue internet pharmacy advertisers. And we still monitor healthcare ads for Google and Bing today, and we've added a number of other services that we help them out with. And then in 2011, we added Amazon to our client list to perform sweeps of its platform. And then one of our most valuable partnerships came in 2013, and that's with Visa. We partnered with them to improve payment processing compliance in banking regarding illicit online pharmacies and a lot of other high-risk areas. And then just last year, we partnered again with Google for a program to certify addiction treatment providers. This certification is required for these merchants to be able to advertise. Soon after, both Facebook and Bing adopted LegitScript certification, and they also require it for advertising. And that brings us to today, 2019, and our new CBD certification program. So you've heard me mention both certification and monitoring. What does that mean exactly? Well, certification and monitoring are kind of like two sides of the same coin. We certify merchants who are operating in compliance, and we monitor internet and payments ecosystems for merchants who are operating out of compliance, particularly ones operating with blatant disregard for the law and for consumer safety. And as you can see, we monitor for a lot of different high-risk areas, including areas that involve certification. So there's our healthcare certification, which includes pharmacies and telemedicine providers, even eyewear merchants, and our drug and alcohol addiction treatment certification for addiction treatment providers. And now our CBD certification, which is for CBD product manufacturers and online merchants. But as you can see, we also monitor outside of the healthcare space, and that includes gambling, fraud, intellectual property infringement, content that advocates for hate or violence, and a whole bunch more. So why do we do this? Well, for a variety of reasons, but really the most important one is to protect consumers. Every year, hundreds of people are injured and even die from the illicit products or services that they access online. We're really just most proud of our work in helping to stop the spread of illicit online pharmacies, such as the one used by a young man whose name was Ryan Haight. He purchased illicit prescription drugs online and he overdosed on them and ultimately died as a result. It's a story that's just all too familiar. And we cover all sorts of products, not just pharmaceuticals, but including dietary supplements or products purporting to be supplements. And that was a case with a young woman named Eloise Perry. She was a college student who bought a toxic substance that was marketed as a diet pill, and she also died as a consequence. So these stories are tragic and they're real, and they happen every year. And helping save lives is really at the core of LegitScript's mission. But in addition to stopping the bad guys, we vet the good guys and help them build trust with their customers. Our healthcare certification program verifies legitimate pharmacies, while our monitoring helps keep the bad ones out. Our addiction treatment certification helps do the same thing for an industry that, if you're not familiar, has historically been pretty dirty. We've helped clean up the online advertising space of predatory addiction treatment facilities. These are ones that prey on the most vulnerable by exploiting their insurance opportunities rather than offering meaningful help to them. And because of this, and because of what LegitScript does, consumers and payment companies and internet platforms have all come to really trust LegitScript certified businesses. And in fact, there are a lot of payment service providers now who require their pharmacies to be certified by LegitScript in order to receive a merchant account. And as I mentioned, both Google and Bing require pharmacies and addiction treatment facilities to be certified in order to advertise through their platforms. So let's get into CBD certification for products and for websites. What does all of this have to do with CBD? Well, you really only need to look at recent headlines to see why this certification is so important. These are just some headlines we pulled really just from the past couple of months. We like to call the CBD industry a bit of a wild west right now, because while there are a lot of really well-meaning merchants, it's still an industry that is full of and is attracting outlaws. And the industry's image is suffering greatly because of it. And that's what we want to help address. How has all of this happened? Well, as most of you probably know, with the passage of the 2018 Farm Bill, interest in CBD has just been booming. And in our experience here at LegitScript, it's this kind of intense interest in a particular industry that frequently attracts opportunists who are looking to quickly cash in by marketing and selling substandard products. And that's really what we want to help stop. It's the resistance of payment service providers and internet platforms to work with CBD merchants shows how complex the regulatory landscape is right now. And then the variety of state laws is making that even trickier. And that's really what we're good at LegitScript. Our analysts are experts at helping interpret and navigate these complex high-risk industries. It's worthwhile noting too, I think that LegitScript has been monitoring CBD for our partners for some time now, so the industry isn't new to us. We're already very familiar with this space. Now, a lot of CBD merchants and manufacturers wonder how card brands view CBD, especially as you're trying to get a merchant account. First of all card brands are aligned with buyer-seller jurisdiction rules. So an example would be a Canadian buyer buying a regulated product in Canada might be permitted. But if a Canadian is in the US and using that same card to buy the same regulated product, that might be considered a violation. So it gets tricky. And the problem for merchants typically occurs at the level of a payment service provider or a payment processor. These intermediaries are typically unwilling to take on the risk because there's so much regulatory complexity in the space right now. So LegitScript certification is being designed to help clarify that uncertainty and to help remove that risk. We believe that payment service providers will be willing to issue merchant accounts knowing that a merchant has been certified by a recognized and trusted third party. So before we get into the nuts and bolts of certification, I wanted us to look at the monumental shifts that we've seen in the CBD landscape in the past year. Gerard, you want to talk a little bit about that so I can take a sip of coffee?
Sure, David. So in order to understand why CBD certification is so important, it's critical to understand where we are today and how we got here. So as most of you know, 2018 was a banner year for the hemp and CBD industries, and it completely changed the regulatory landscape. The first big development was in July. The FDA approved the CBD drug Epidiolex for the treatment of 2 rare forms of epilepsy. And then following that, in September, the DEA rescheduled all FDA-approved drugs containing CBD to Schedule 5, which is the least restrictive classification. And then finally, and most importantly, as I'm sure you all know, in December, the 2018 Farm Bill was signed into law. And the Farm Bill included provisions which explicitly removed hemp and its extracts, including hemp-derived CBD, from the DEA's controlled substances schedules entirely. However, another thing that the Farm Bill did was that it explicitly preserved the FDA's authority to regulate many CBD products. So for years, the FDA has maintained that CBD is an impermissible ingredient in food and dietary supplements due to a provision in the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act known as the IND preclusion. So almost immediately after the Farm Bill was signed into law, the FDA issued a statement reiterating that CBD is not currently permitted to be sold as a dietary supplement or in food. But thanks to pressure from Congress and the general public and the CBD industry, FDA has started the rulemaking process to exempt some forms of CBD from the IND preclusion and potentially allow them to be sold in food or supplements. At the end of May, the agency held its first hearing with over 100 speakers, and over 3,000 comments have been submitted to the rulemaking docket. Now, the FDA has made some comments suggesting that a final rule could be 3 to 5 years away, but progress is being made in this area. So with all that in mind, the question is really, why should you get certified by LegitScript? In short, it's all about helping you to demonstrate that you're following the rules. As David touched on, there's a lot of opportunists out there taking advantage of the murky legal situation to sell non-compliant and substandard products. Now, this is a complex area, and LegitScript certification, plainly put, is just a marker that your products and company are following the existing rules and are all around above board. Given the fast pace of this sector and the sheer amount of misinformation floating around, a lot of people, including payment processors and internet platforms, just can't keep up with what's legal and what is not. So as David mentioned, LegitScript is recognized throughout the payments and e-commerce arena for helping identify both who is compliant and who is not compliant. So with more and more people entering the market, it can be really important to set yourself apart. And we definitely recognize that there's other certification programs out there, which we really think is great. This is a complicated area, and we believe that having multiple certifying organizations looking at different elements of the industry is really important. I know, for example, the U.S. Hemp Authority certification program does a fairly comprehensive review of manufacturing and agricultural practices. Our program obviously looks at those as well, but we all have an overall focus on the e-commerce angles and regulatory compliance across the board, including FDA, FTC, and state-specific regulations. And since we're the only real independent third-party certification body, we offer a unique benefit. But in fact, we certified some of our first products just yesterday, in fact, 4 products from Charlotte's Web, and they hold both US Hemp Authority certification as well as LegitScript certification.
Awesome. Congrats to Charlotte's Web.
So as far as the actual certification process go, it's important to note that there are actually 2 interconnected tracks for certification, product certification and website certification. So the product certification track basically applies to any products which are compliant with state and federal laws, which also obviously means that they contain CBD that's derived from hemp, which is legally cultivated. So at the moment, this could include cosmetics, soaps, topical products, pretty much most products that meet federal and state guidelines. And as the law develops, the scope of certifiable products will expand as well. The website certification, on the other hand, basically applies to any websites which are selling LegitScript certified CBD products into the states where their sale is allowed. So our review of an application is guided by 2 sets of certification standards, depending on which certification track you're on. You can find them on legitscript.com pretty easily. There's links there at the bottom of the slide there. But briefly put, the standards fall into 3 general categories, albeit there's some difference depending on which certification track you're on. The first one is about product compliance and supply chain integrity, and this basically means compliance with all applicable laws and regulations related to that specific product that you're looking to get certified. It also includes a demonstrated supply chain integrity, making sure that your marketing doesn't contain impermissible therapeutic claims, and an overall demonstration that you've taken a look at the rules and best practices and that you're following them. This also includes making sure your products are tested and that they actually contain what's listed on the label. Then there's business and operational compliance. This involves things like corporate registration, adequate insurance, a review of your corporate officers and affiliated businesses to make sure that they're not involved in anything potentially concerning. And if you're selling non-CBD products, we're also going to take a look at those to make sure none of those are problematic as well. And then the last category is standards about transparency. So since our program is really focused on the sale of CBD products over the internet, where it's just much easier for bad actors to hide what they're doing, transparency is a huge element for us. We like consumers to be able to see who they're buying from and to feel secure that they will get what they're paying for. So these standards basically mostly amount to just be upfront with us and be upfront with your customers. So for a brief overview of what the application process looks like, you basically start by paying the application fee. You'll then be prompted to fill out a fairly in-depth questionnaire, which will ask for a bunch of information such as licensing and supply chain documentation, product labels, ingredient lists, etc. For product certification, after one of our analysts screen your application to ensure that you're in scope, we'll then send you an email basically inviting you to send your products to testing at one of our partner labs. You'll then have an opportunity to choose one of the few different labs to conduct the testing. And we do recognize that a lot of merchants already have testing results, which they do on their own, which we think is really great. But just to make sure that nobody is fudging the numbers, we ask that you also get tested with one of our partners. As our analysts review your application and documentation, they'll send clarifying questions or identify potential issues that you'll usually have a chance to remediate. And after the review is complete, if we determine that you're in compliance with our standards, we'll then charge you an annual monitoring fee, certify you, and our ongoing monitoring will commence. So our ongoing monitoring basically makes sure that you're staying on top of things and that you're continuing to stay in compliance with our certification standards. So as far as pricing, it's worth noting that there's a volume discount for products. So we reduce the prices if you submit 5, 10, and 20 products at a time. I'll show you the numbers on the next slide so you can see see how it's all laid out. But the monitoring fee, as I mentioned, goes towards ensuring ongoing monitoring. That's a one-time annual fee, that's applied every year when your certification is renewed. One other thing to mention is that We recognize that this industry has been operating in a bit of a legal gray area for a while due to the complicated landscape. So applicants who may have not been compliant in the past will obviously still have a path to certification through probationary certification that basically involves increased and more in-depth monitoring. This certification is really saved for situations where an applicant has a demonstrated history of non-compliance, but has made concerted efforts to turn things around and bring themselves into compliance. So here's just a real quick look at the price breakdown. As you'll notice, we're offering a 20% discount on the annual monitoring fee for any applications that are submitted prior to October 1st of this year.
Awesome. And you'll be able to view this on our website at legitscript.com/CBD. Thanks, Gerard. So in our conversations with CBD merchants and manufacturers during the creation of this program, we got a lot of really great questions, and we wanted to address some of those with you today. However, if you have a question that isn't addressed here, please do send us your question using the webinar chat feature. We'll compile answers and we'll send those out to attendees in the coming days. But let's get into some of these common questions. Gerard, what jurisdictions is CBD certification going to cover?
Yeah, so off the bat, the program will initially be covering businesses that are targeting customers in the US. This doesn't necessarily mean that applicants are required to be based in the US. For example, if a company is based in Canada but has a product line that is geared towards US customers, so long as the company is complying with all the rules in the relevant jurisdictions that they're selling their products and they meet all of our standards, they would potentially be certifiable. But for websites especially, just know that we do look very closely to make sure that sales of CBD products are permissible in the places that you are selling. And as the program grows and the rules around CBD start to solidify, we're hoping to expand our certification to businesses that target other jurisdictions like Canada or the EU and the UK.
Now, what about this process, especially for those who are excited to jump in and get certified? How long can they expect certification to take?
So this one really depends. We'd love to have a straightforward answer, but it's really contingent on a number of different factors. The first one is obviously the complexity of the application. If an application has a really large number of products, or it's for novel products where the rules are just less clear, we'll probably have to take a bit longer on that. Another big element is applicant responsiveness after we send out our follow-up questions. So the faster you respond, the faster the application review will take, obviously. But this also doesn't mean that you shouldn't provide in-depth responses when you are responding to our questions, because another huge factor that can slow down an application process is just a general lack of transparency or insufficient answers to our questions, because it just requires us to potentially do more digging and have more back and forth to get the information that we're looking for.
I'm sure a lot of our manufacturers and merchants on the line today are going to want to know if they can get their CBD supplements or CBD foods certified.
So not yet. Since our program is really focused on across-the-board compliance, we're just not able to open the program up to supplements or food products given the FDA's current regulations. We definitely recognize that this is a huge part of the CBD market, but until the FDA issues clarification or finalizes its rulemaking, these products just aren't compliant with federal law. And we're not really here to act as arbiters of which laws should or should not be followed. We're basically looking at across-the-board compliance. But we are actively following the discussions here. Our program will obviously change to accommodate any regulatory developments as it changes.
Good to know. So what about those who are manufacturing a variety of CBD products, some that may be in scope for this certification program and others that are CBD foods or supplements?
Yeah, they can obviously submit the in-scope products. While food and dietary supplements aren't eligible to be certified as products, if you're making both supplements and in-scope products, you're absolutely welcome to submit the in-scope products for product certification. So, for example, if you make a supplement and a cosmetic, you can still submit this cosmetic for certification, just so long as it otherwise meets our standards.
And now what about merchants and manufacturers who may be making some in-scope products, but also make other products that contain THC?
So we definitely recognize that There's plenty of states out there where THC and marijuana are legal under state law, but at the federal level, it's still a Schedule I controlled substance. So until they're rescheduled by the DEA or otherwise, manufacturers and merchants that are producing or selling THC or marijuana products just aren't eligible for certification at this time.
Let's talk a bit about websites and CBD websites. Can those merchants who have CBD products on their website get their website certified?
Absolutely. So in this case, your websites would be certifiable so long as all the products sold on the sites are certified. As we certify products, we'll be listing them on our pricing page, so you can look and see if the products you sell are certified or not. And I think another thing that's worth mentioning here is if you are a manufacturer and you also have your own website, you can apply for both product and website certification, and it'll kind of be a two-step certification process. So you can have your products certified, so you can sell them on your website, and others who can sell them on their LegitScript certified website as well.
Good. So those websites can be certified, but all those CBD products need to be LegitScript certified first. Awesome. And how does this work with private labelers?
So since all products with a unique UPC are required to be certified, private labelers can talk with their contract manufacturer to decide who wants to submit the products for certification, depending on which makes more sense for you. It seems that it would make the most sense for a contract manufacturer to submit the products for certification, since they hold most of the documentation that we would require, but we recognize that there's a lot of contract manufacturers that just won't want to do that. So if you're a private labeler and your contract manufacturer isn't looking to get your product certified for you, and you can provide sufficient documentation, your products may be able to get certified.
And one of the money questions I'm sure lots of folks will be wondering is, will certification help me get and keep a merchant account?
We really hope so. So with this certification, as we said before, you can demonstrate that you've met our fairly stringent standards. So that helps payment processors feel comfortable that you're meeting all the necessary requirements for your business. Our other certifications are recognized and in many cases are required by players in the payment industry and e-commerce. And our hope is that this certification will start to play a similar role and help to bring them much needed clarity to payment processors and just give them the peace of mind that they need to be able to onboard you.
And another question I'm sure folks will have is, will certification allow me to place online ads on major internet platforms?
So the answer to this one is not yet. I mean, we're working really closely with a number of our current partners as well as other folks in order to see this certification integrated into their platforms over the coming months in much the same way that our other certifications are utilized. But basically all we can say here is stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Awesome. Those are the big questions that we've had as we've developed this program. If you have others, again, please send those to us via the webinar chat feature, or if you prefer, you can write into us at legitscript.com/contact. Our team is always happy to answer any questions you have about the certification program. When you're ready to start your application, you can do so at my.legitscript.com. Again, we are processing applications in the order that they are received, so the sooner the better. You'll also qualify for 20% off your first year of annual monitoring when you act before October. On behalf of Gerard and the certification team and the rest of LegitScript, we hope you found this webinar helpful. We're so glad you joined us, and we hope to hear from you soon. Thanks so much.